What's up, y'all? This is Rational Vids. I'm coming back to you with another report here, or another video, but alternatively. Sorry I couldn't post in a minute. I've been very busy as of lately working on reports for my master's degree in college, and it's been mixed. I've had a lot of bad shit happen to me over the past month, so overall it's just been hard to post normally or regularly on my channel. So if you like this channel, like and subscribe. Today we are covering a majority report segment, and you all know how lovely, quote unquote, the majority report is at their quality programming, or rather shitlib programming. Today they have Nomiki Konst on as a guest. Sam Cedar was sick for some reason, so he's not on this stream. But she's having a conversation with Emma Vigeland, or Emma Vigeland. I don't know how you pronounce her last name. And right now, Emma Vigeland takes a call from a caller about the Amazon labor union movement. And if you didn't know already, Amazon labor union organized successfully to become the first labor union at Amazon. And now Chris Smalls, who is a very humble man, he organized in the most clever way possible. He's going to be in the history books of labor union leaders. Like, I believe this guy has made the next evolutionary step of labor union movements. He didn't even have that large of an organized movement. It was just him and somebody else outside at a desk collecting signatures. But there was no massive strikes or protests or anything. So the fact that Chris Smalls is, by the way, the reason Chris Smalls is humble with himself is because he wants to make way for collective leadership, not just sole leadership. He does not state that he is the forefront of this movement, although we know him as the leader right now, but he does not state that he wants to be a leader. He wants to be like some celebrity. He's just a worker, average worker, dresses unprofessionally like a boss that's so based, and he organizes with his fellow workers at the Amazon warehouse in Staten Island. And now he's getting at least 50 calls a day from, or at least probably more than that, from at least 50 different other Amazon locations where they also want to form unions, and Jeff Bezos is crying on his golden toilet right now. So absolutely great, 100% successful. And this caller is going to mention something about how AOC has been given more coverage on this story rather than how much coverage has actually been given to Chris Smalls and the labor movement.
All calling from a 706 number. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yes, this is you. Who's you?
I am Justin from Georgia.
Justin from Georgia. What's on your mind?
Saw some conflict, and this is like terminally online stuff, so apologies in advance, but I saw some conflict about like AOC's relevance towards the Amazon union vote that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering to what extent does it, I guess, matter to the left as a movement in general to deify or demonize, progressives who are the result of electoral politics. Like, how much
you should do neither, in my opinion. Right.
Right. That's like where I'm coming from, because it seemed like so many people, I guess the time and energy that could have been used to focus on that vote and that union in particular was focused on like the people in politics and the relation to that vote, not the people themselves.
Well, let me just reiterate what I said on the show yesterday. You might have missed this, Justin, but
Now the caller does make a good point. He says that more media attention should have been focused on the success of the labor union votes, not AOC's tweets, subsequent Twitter fight with Krystal Ball that I covered on one of my previous episodes, or one of my previous videos. And Emma Vigeland is going to given her 2 cents there. And to be clear, I am definitely not a fan of the Majority Report. I'm definitely not a fan of Emma Vigilant. They're what I call faux progressives or shitlibs that keep trying to push more progressive energy into the Democratic Party funnel. And overall, that funnel, what that funnel does is there's a filter that filters out all the good progressive things and leaves a few caveats while the rest of it is shitlib neocorporatism. That's what it is.
I basically said, you know, I did not love the way she responded on Twitter about it, in terms of like, you know, kind of.
She could have just responded to Christian and said, "You're right, we'll do better."
You're right. I should have done better. I was a blind spot. I should have been there, maybe. You know, right? Like she could.
We'll make it up.
Right. But at the same time, right? I you know, you can understand why she feels besieged, but like, you know, she should have been there, right? I think that.
So yes, AOC should have upheld her promise to Chris Smalls since he met with her. She said she was going to be at Staten Island's warehouse, and she wasn't there. She completely ghosted him in favor of going to a Met Gala. A fucking Met Gala. Where there are large protests, and she cited security concerns. Apparently among her staff, by the way, they mentioned that the Amazon protest movements in Staten Island they looked too thug, which was astoundingly racist dog whistling and also classist dog whistling. Just calling these people who are lower income workers, just average Joes, just because of the way Christian Smalls dresses, they'll call them thugs. That just shows to me that the progressives, the Justice Dems, the squad in the White in Congress, they're just grifters, 100%. And then AOC proceeded to put the attention on her, and held up all the like the three fist tweets, like, oh, I participated in this, I'm going to take the credit for this, I'm going to make this about me now instead of making it about the labor union movement, the real revolution. No, sideline that. I'm going to make it about me. Oh, I am going to promote this even though I wasn't there. And then if we go back a little bit, where are we at? Here we go.
We'll make it up.
Right. But at the same time, right, I you know, you can understand why she feels besieged, but like, you know, she should have been there, right? I think
disagree.
Disagree. Okay.
Disagree. First off, the last time AOC got involved in an Amazon fight, Amazon started pouring all the money in. You know, they did put a lot of money in, but they did it in a different way. This was not, I mean, it was kind of better that they did this internal campaign. And granted, it went on for a long time, and they had an independent union, and I've talked to Chris about this and why. And
what internal campaign? The internal campaign where she went to the Met Gala and socialized with a bunch of rich people rather than working with the lower income working class communities that organized this protest and this organizing drive for the formation of Amazon's first real labor union. Where was she? She was supposed to be on the ground. She made a promise, Nomiki.
And there's a lot of pluses and minuses to attaching yourself to an existing union like RWDSU, like they did in Bessemer, and RWDSU is based here in New York, and having a full-fledged campaign with like national figures. It also puts a big target on your back. And, you know, slow and steady wins the race. It's
What target? She's already had like a target on her back from Republicans for years. Okay, ever since she started her campaign, she's been the constant smearing target of Republican disinfo. But then she proceeded to do nothing that she promised her voters in Congress. In fact, she voted in current House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who's fucking 82 years old. She proceeded to vote her in again, twice. What has she been doing? What has she been doing? Has she been doing anything substantially to help the left? To help the 99%, to help the populist movement? She has not. Not at all. She's been turned by possibly manipulated and groomed by the Democratic Party to be the replacement for Pelosi. That's all she's there for. Her backstory isn't even true. Everybody portrayed her as this young lower income Latina girl from the Bronx who's going to rise up and take the progressive seat. She went to a freaking liberal arts college that was like with high tuition, and she was not even born in that section of the Bronx, according to some reports. Are you kidding me, Nomiki? Like, really?
I don't know. I think in retrospect it's easy to say that.
I get that, right?
But also, like, I'm sorry, Krystal Ball, with all due respect, and she is a friend of mine, I live in Queens. I live in Astoria. I'm literally half a mile away from where the first Amazon headquarters was going to be. You know who is the...
What part of Astoria do you live in? Do you live in the part of Astoria Heights, which is lower income, or the main community of Astoria in Queens, which is actually very fucking affluent? Like, this is an affluent. They have some of the highest rent prices, some of the highest housing values in New York City, apparently, or among the highest. It's very expensive to live in that area. I'm from Astoria. I come from the Queens. It's almost like saying, oh yeah, I'm from the hood. I came from Wood Glen neighborhood where there's suburban cars and, 2-story single family residences, cookie cutter neighborhoods.
The biggest advocate for that? AOC. You know who is not there? You. So if you sit here and you're playing who gets to be a progressive, queen or not, and you're more interested in knocking down the few allies we have, I'd like to know, where were you in Bernie 2016?
What does that have to do with the current? Okay, so first off, she's questioning Krystal Ball's progressive credentials. Well, I don't think Krystal Ball is entirely honest either. I think she kind of creates this image for herself, given that she's now a pretty prominent media figure. She has on Secular Talk Kyle Kalinske, whose ratings are also dwindling on YouTube. But regardless, she's still more progressive than you, Nomiki. I mean, you worked with Our Revolution, but then in 2012 you were campaigning with Obama. So what do you got to say about that, huh? Why were you campaigning for a more progressive candidate back then, huh? People were going along with that, with Obama's neoliberal grift. But you didn't question it back then. And by the way, Krystal Ball exposed, like, if you look at Krystal Ball's record on Wikipedia, I'm not going to show, I can search it for you right now. Krystal Ball. Back in the 2010 House campaign, she ran to represent Virginia's 1st Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives against Republican incumbent Rob Whitman. She supported education reform. She wanted... Now, this doesn't seem as progressive as it does just seem neoliberal, although this can be a conservative thing, charter schools. More often, it's just kind of a business-friendly thing. So I guess back then she wasn't, but then she wanted to do alternative certification for teachers and pay teachers 6-figure salaries. She also called for a lifetime ban on lobbying by former members of Congress, banning lobbyist gifts, increasing disclosure, and establishing a new independent ethics commission to investigate and audit influence by special interests. So even if she never identified explicitly as like a progressive Democrat, she was opposing corporate lobbying in 2010. Okay, nobody even talked about that. This was during Obama years. Obama enhanced corporate lobbying throughout his administration's executive orders and throughout the bills passed by Congress and throughout, Justice Department decisions, Supreme Court decisions. In the cycle of 2010, she was a regular contributor to the HuffPost, which is a liberal newspaper. She appeared as contributors on these sources. And then one of her most discussed monologues on the show was a 2014 critique of Hillary Clinton, which urged her to not run for president, which is good. Coming from the progressive side, that is good. That is what she wanted. And then in 2017, about 5 years ago, she argued that the Democratic Party needed to return to its New Deal roots by emulating Franklin D. Roosevelt. Well, that's not explicitly left. That's more like a defense of capitalism, but she does come off as a progressive to me. And then she was among the largest contributors to Richard Ojedi's campaign for the West Virginia Senate in 2017. And if you don't know, Richard Ojeda was a candidate that ran in the Democratic primaries for the 2020 election. He was a populist lefty. Like, he was going on air live and saying, let the dirt poor eat the filthy rich. Like, he was that progressive. He was that left. And that is, like, if that doesn't explain that she has at least some progressive credentials, then I don't know what I don't know who you're surveying, Nomiki. Nomiki, on the other hand, has advocated for NATO bombing of countries. And her shill voice is so goddamn annoying. I hate it.
Where were you in Bernie 2016? It's always convenient.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
2016.
Oh,
And be the progressive purist.
yeah. Well,
First of all, that mic was like, nah, I'm just gonna cut out. Your voice is way too annoying for this mic. And then second, who are you calling a progressive purist? Krystal Ball is literally advocating for left populist movements which get together people from different, I guess, to raise class consciousness to organize. Like, she was supportive of Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2020. Not that she was supportive in 2016. I don't know as the reason as to why, but she did do a dissertation. Again, she wrote a critique of Hillary Clinton, urging her to not run for president, which is something every progressive nearly agrees on. Every leftist, every progressive, even most liberals agree that Hillary Clinton should not run. And she tries to be as inclusive as possible and talk to many people as possible. Progressive purist? It seems like I'm looking at the progressive purist on the left side of the screen right now.
look, I mean,
Do that.
it's a branding exercise for a show. Like,
I'm over it. It's just
I'm less
ripping
concerned
apart the
about
left.
But my point is just
Okay, so I have to keep pausing because she makes so many incorrect points. The left was already fractured, dude. The left has been fractured because for two reasons. Number one, force the vote, which was a measure kind of de facto led by Jimmy Dore, was trying to force a House floor vote in Congress on the issue of Medicare for All. And this was not to even accomplish Medicare for All, by the way. This was to reveal which House members would actually live up to their promises for healthcare for all. It was to kind of out these people it would either expose that they were really fighting for it or expose that they weren't. But that's kind of split the left in half at that point, because you had people that disagreed with the strategy while you had people who supported, like Jimmy Dore and the alternative indie left movements, supporting it. Kyle Kulinski even said he supported force the vote at one point. But then the other time, and I think the more damning point for the fracturing of the left, was that the left lost its true leader, Bernie Sanders, after he sold his ass out to Joe Biden and the Democrats. He was running as an independent for years with massive progressive political success in his home state and in U.S. Congress. But when he started going off, chastising his own voters and his own volunteers, such as Breonna Joy Gray, and going off on and saying, instead of actually fighting Joe Biden tooth and nail on every single one of his past historic policy decisions, they were so easy to target. Joe Biden has so many fucking black marks on his record that Bernie could have called out, but he didn't. Instead, he called Biden a good friend of mine and completely sold his ass out. He abandoned the left. He left the left leaderless. And people went off different ways. There is no leader driving the ship, okay? The left is off. There's no movement anymore. The Amazon labor union victories and some progressive victories at the local level can empower us, people like me, people like Revolutionary Blackout Network, people like Sabby Sabs, people like Aaron Mate, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, Chris Hedges, and the Vanguard, other influential thinkers, to rise up and take back our country again from this two-party duopoly that, for some reason, you feel the need to defend, Nomiki.
Yeah,
It's Roger Ailes politics, though. I'm going to continue with this. It's Roger Ailes politics. Roger Ailes picks fights, creates fights, rides fights, turns things. And frankly, AOC, she should have responded, frankly. If she said anything, she'd have been like, I'm really supportive of the union effort. Congratulations. We're really proud of everybody. And then move on.
She's not even saying that she should apologize for completely ghosting Christian Smalls and the rest of the volunteers at the Amazon labor union movement. She's not even saying she should apologize. And what are you talking about? Like, the fracturing of the left does not attack politicians. It's not about attacking politicians. Everybody has the right to critique and criticize politicians, even if they are on your side. If they're not fighting for you or doing the things that they say they'll do, then you have to call them out. There's no other way to hold these people's whole elected leaders' feet to the fire. Okay? Bernie's done. He's not running again. But you still want to act like we're in 2016 while we're being, duped into getting progressives through the Democratic Party, which we know is impossible. The Democratic Party is obstinate to reform. And for some reason, every leader that we tried to put in there subsequently sold themselves out too. So they can cater and toe the line of the Democratic Party. That's all they did. If we need a real left movement, we have to do it by fomenting more disdain for the two-party duopoly. We have to foment it by getting voters out to vote for third parties, or, as and more talk of this is happening, but general strikes, mass mutual aid, and revolts. People are in burn shit down mode, Nomiki. Can't you understand that? Really?
But to respond to a YouTube host who wasn't even on the left 5 years ago, I'm not saying that you can't evolve, but this is clearly an exercise here. And as much as I respect her and I like her and she's my friend, I just think that these choices are really dangerous and they're hurting the movement. And in 3 or 4 years, they're not going to look great.
What's even more dangerous is that AOC is making this about herself. She's showing her true colors. She's an egotistic politician now. She's not the we keep trying to find idols on the left when it has to come from the bottom. This is what Chris Hedges said. The real revolution and the real protest movements, the real movements, ground movements, come from community organizing at the bottom, not from these figureheads that we try to make into heroes all the time. They're the people we should be criticizing and critiquing and holding feet to the fire. We have to hold every politician accountable, regardless of where they lie on the political spectrum, if there even is a left-right spectrum anymore. It's more about top versus bottom now. The media runs interference for them. And then Biden just called, he supported Chris Small's labor union victory, which props to Biden, I guess. That's at least he made a statement about it. He didn't have to be in, but then again, Krystal Ball and Joe Biden were not asked to be at the labor union movement, but AOC was. And apparently she said she would be. and she wasn't. End of story. People like Nomiki Konst, man, like, she is like the epitome of a whiny, triggered shitlib that for some reason, gets invited onto Fox News all the time because Fox News wants to, in the conservatives, this is a very, very underhanded, clever tactic that Fox News hosts use, is that they get the worst pieces of crap to come on their show, representing, and then picturing them and sort of framing them as left wings, so that Nomiki Konst represents the mentality of left wingers. She does not. She's not even the leftist. I dare say that she's not even that progressive. Even if she was an organizer at our revolution, she was probably one of the organizers that was poorly giving very poor. She was probably the main person giving poor advice to Bernie and running interference for his campaign. And I remember Bernie's campaign, or his campaign managers, made a lot of fucking stupid mistakes on their campaign, and all those stupid mistakes hit their climax when Bernie decided to drop out of the movement, abandoning his people, chastising his volunteers to not do things that they should have done out of courage. Even if they didn't win, it still would have made put a good image on the left. Now the conservatives hate anything associated with the left wing. They'll even call Biden a communist, which is hilarious. But you see where this is coming from, Nomiki. It's people like you who constantly play defense and cope to make this movement look bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust her incentives at all. And
Justin, we're just going to let you go and keep up our conversation. If that's
Sorry,
okay.
Justin.
Yeah.
You triggered me.
But I mean, I think my perspective on this issue is that if you do something like Chris Smalls did about unionizing a Amazon union, and you have problems with AOC, you have the right to air those, even if like there's concern that people in the media are going to use it as a branding exercise, or even if people aren't sort of convinced about the utility of making this about or firing back at AOC. Like, I think frankly, like, it's the kind of heat, it's a much better heat that typically gets applied to AOC, and it gets one that could be constructive. But I do agree about media incentives to use this as a branding opportunity.
I'm 100% behind Chris in terms of, like, if he has, based on just one, the fact of his enormous success, the fact that, like, he built this from the ground up in terms of, there was, as you mentioned, there were benefits to joining a larger union, but he was able to go about it his own way. And it's like this incredible story. And I feel that an over focus on her takes away from the victories of the organizers. Even
100%.
though his criticism, I'm way more willing to listen to that because he's on the ground there. And I think that that's valid and he should be heard in that regard. But
he also didn't say what they're saying either. Go back and play the.
That's a lie. Chris Smalls, when I know this because there's a status quo video where they were interviewing Chris Smalls on the ground right after his victory, and him saying, they were, I think the interviewee was asking, I think it was Jordan, he was asking Chris Smalls whether he would, whether he would invite Democrats to his victory, and he was like, hell no. They abandoned me. They ghosted me, man. They can do whatever they want. No ill will against these people, but they can't do but since they didn't support me as they said they would, I'm going to call it out on the stream. That's why Krystal Ball invited him on Breaking Points with Krystal and Kyle to explain his position. And this is like utterly lying. Like, this is just straight lying to the Majority Report's audience. That's not true. Chris Smalls actually, when I think AOC was mentioned by name by Jordan. If it wasn't, it was probably just do you thank the Justice Democrats? And he was like, no. I'm going to thank somebody who didn't support me. And totally rational response, Krystal Ball. This is what Krystal Ball pointed out to AOC after she made her original tweet. That's what she was calling her out on. It wasn't even to start a fight. She called her out on her bullshit.
The tape. That's the other thing.
Well,
they used him, which is offensive, and sometimes people don't realize they're being used in this media game. That
I understand that some people can be used on the media to promote things, like how you are used constantly on Fox News to promote a bad image for the quote-unquote left. You got, the last time I saw you on a Fox News interview, you got kicked the fuck around because you were constantly defending your dear leader Joe Brandon. You got kicked around by conservatives, Nomiki. Do you know how embarrassing that is? She is so brainwashed. I don't even think she is either. She went on Vosh too. I remember she went on Vosh and informed him on these CIA talking points about the Ukraine-Russia war, as well as Syria, as well as stuff about Syria that Jimmy Dore claimed and proved that it was false. Jackson Hinkle, I'm sure, covered this too, but Nomiki, you are such a fucking liar. And I don't know if you're a CIA asset or not, but you clearly are doing stories that align with that narrative, align with the U.S. imperialist narrative. And when it comes to this, claiming that I've been supportive of the Amazon labor movements, maybe, but there's a difference between web armchair activism, and I guess I'm one to talk, and on the ground movements. The thing is, I have the right narrative. I have a pro-worker narrative. You do not, Nomiki. You live in this bubble with your friends and cable news, and the politicians friendly to you, and you have their numbers, and you go out to expensive pubs and drink and whatnot. I mean, I don't know what you do, but you clearly are not within the sphere of understanding lower income people, working class people, and workers.
That I think is really only benefiting the right wing and capital.
Well, Chris has a right to criticize. I really do feel that way. I mean, he is on the ground. Shows that are doing it, I mean, shows that are now appealing to right-wing audiences more than they are to left-wing audiences, and we can put,
the numbers are there.
Rising up there too, right? Or, sorry, what's it now?
The new one.
Okay, whatever. But
they pretended to forget what the name was. Breaking Points. They're just utterly petty. This is just utterly hilarious. Like Emma is not that much better, by the way, than Nomiki Konst. I mean, at least she's saying that AOC should have been there. Even Emma Vigeland of the Majority Report, rather the 1% Majority Report, with MSNBC cable news contracts for Sam Cedar, can even say that AOC should have fucking been there. End of fucking story, Nomiki.
But the point is that's a branding exercise, right? And that is I'm less sympathetic towards, and I don't think it looks good. But it's more. I'm interested in the organizers' opinions on this, and that's really
which they distorted, is what I'm saying. Okay. They didn't even say what he said.
I just covered this, but that's a lie. I just said how Chris Smalls, although not directly naming names, he called out the people who didn't show up to the organizing drive. He did it. He's like, I did this shit without them. I don't need them. I just have me and my workers. We're going to organize and we're going to lead strikes across the U.S. in different warehouses, and we're going to form labor unions across the country in every Amazon warehouse. He has a plan laid out to organize at least 100 more Amazon warehouses, which is 100% fantastic. I want to see this happen. But apparently Nomiki seems more angry that Krystal Ball doesn't have the same narrative as a bunch of the rest of the shit libs on MSNBC, CNN, The Atlantic, David Dole, The Majority Report to a broad extent, and even sometimes and even sometimes breaking points. And and yeah, I forgot to name names. The Humanist Report as well does this crap as well. But and people like Vosh, people like this that push what I would consider anti-populist and in even broader terms anti-left perspective, they're not helping the movement. They are the ones fracturing the movement, not Krystal.
Now, he did chime in on Twitter, and that's fair enough. But again, this is all distracting away. This is why unions and movements need to be militant. So we don't get distracted by when people are trying to create drama. Drama only is benefiting them. And
yes, Nomiki Konst will be at the front of the militant revolution. She will be holding a rifle in her arms and smoking a Cuban cigar, saying, "We the workers stand up." From her. Yes, Nomiki Konst, who probably is a limousine liberal in New York City, is going to lead the revolution. That's just hilarious.
You know, this is like a walking NFT exercise at this point. It's like influencer culture affecting the left. Really, it's what it is. It's like, how do we all boost each other? You know, these random.
She's about to call some people out. She's about to fracture the left even further. Let's start by smearing, not only by smearing Krystal Ball, but also by smearing influencer culture, which you can say BreadTube actually did that first, before Jimmy Dore and everybody else. Oh, I guess not before Jimmy Dore, but before everybody else who follows Jimmy Dore started doing this stuff and woke up to the real truth that the two-party duopoly isn't working.
Random accounts that pop up out of nowhere, and suddenly
random accounts. So she's talking. She's talking about people like Jackson Hinkle, like Revolutionary Blackout Network and Sabby Sabs, like Frank Analysis, like Unapologetic. All these people with lower amounts of views, and then she's also calling out people like, and you'll find out there's two people she calls out later.
You know, they're put on the Jimmy Dore show, and they're put on, RT, and they're put on Aaron Mate's show, and then they all, influence off of each other, and they all create conflict off of each other.
Is that not what you're doing here? Is that not what you're doing in your own bubbles? You're influencing off each other. It's called creating a movement, Nomiki. And to be honest, Jimmy Dore is over 1 million subscribers right now. He's at 1.01 million subscribers right now. I think that says something. And then she's gonna call, but wait, she's gonna call them all right wing. Watch
each other, and when you really look at their numbers, it's the right wing following them. But then we're all responding to it.
Jimmy Dore has just as many left wing followers as he probably has right wing followers. And even if right wing people did follow him, who fucking cares? They're getting honest, real, truthful, and helpful opinions. These are healthy political opinions one should have. Criticism of democracy, embracement of anti-authoritarianism, support of labor movements and universal health care, anti-war sentiments, correct stances on foreign policy, Nomiki. Even if his viewers are somewhat right-wing, they're getting that. They're getting this information from him. That's why he goes on Fox News. When Jimmy goes on Fox News, he spreads narratives that seek to undermine the right's narrative about war on shows like Tucker Carlson. And I say the right, and I include neoliberals such as yourself who push pro-war, imperialistic foreign policy agendas. He goes on there and says, and immediately calls out to the fucking president that we should pull out of Afghanistan, or argues that the Ukraine-Russia disinfo is all a lie. It's all propaganda being pushed by Biden and people like in the mainstream media and Zelensky. I don't like Tucker either. Let's be honest here. He's a very effective liar, very effective propagandist, akin to Joseph Goebbels. I mean, probably is just about as far right as Joseph Goebbels, probably. But he gets it right on some things. He sprinkles a bit of truth in there, and that bit of truth is truthful to 100%, such as his truth on war and foreign policy of the United States. when you go on Fox News, Nomiki, with your shrill ass chipmunk voice, everybody starts kicking you around, and you don't even articulate your arguments properly. You once came on Fox News advocating for the censorship. You once went on MSNBC or CNN or one of the mainstream networks advocating for the censorship of Joe Rogan. So you represent a bad image for the left, while people like Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate represent a good image for the left. We represent what we really want to do: raise awareness of class consciousness. Raise awareness of the fucked up shit that is happening in our country. We don't live in a democracy anymore. It's a plutocracy. It's an oligarchy. But here you are, still thinking it's 2016, trying to get progressives into the Democratic Party, or even 2018 2019 when there's still an inkling of hope in this world. Still trying to push progressives to the Democratic Party, and it's not going to work. There's no movement, Nomiki. Not anymore. Not with Bernie out of the leadership of that movement. The left is disorganized.
But I
Like
also
they're
think,
the
why this is less concerning is like this is a good pivot, frankly, for those energies. Like if all of a sudden they decide that we need to start helping unionize Amazon warehouses despite AOC, and that leads to actual more results like this, I think that's fine. And ultimately, if it doesn't, then we'll have like more to critique about why it didn't lead to anything productive. But I think like a lot, like Jimmy Dore, for instance, like if he wants to all of a sudden act like he's supporting unions for taking COVID safety seriously, I mean, it'd be news to the Chicago teachers that he was basically shaming into saying they're fear-mongering.
Oh my God. The Majority Report always likes to go. I don't know what it is about with networks like TYT and the Majority Report that's sort of related to TYT and other networks like it. They all go after Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate. They think they have this derangement syndrome about Jimmy. They blame everything that's wrong on Jimmy Dore. They blame him. Sam Cedar has gone after him at least 10 times, if not more than that. And they criticize him for all the wrong reasons, too. And I think this is just where the misunderstanding lies. It's you're accusing Jimmy Dore and people like him of fracturing the left, but here you are going out and smearing their names, akin to slander, and using that to say, oh no, we're the real left. We're the real left that still serves the corporations served by the two-party duopoly, and we're going to ask people who are poor to give money to candidates that won't do shit for them. To keep funding the two-party duopoly, but you're the real left. You're the real left Majority Report, Nomiki. Yeah, we all see through the grift now.
And this is how this unionization effort started, without of COVID's lack of safety precautions.
Right.
April 2020. That's what Chris was concerned about.
But why
among other things.
But that's why I guess like
the COVID-19 mandates killed our economy. Remember the supply chain crisis? It's still going on. We're still having high inflation rates. People can't afford housing. There's a very short supply of housing relative to the demand. We're in late stage capitalism. In fact, we're in final stage capitalism right now. Our country is dying. It's collapsing like a stack of dominoes. And here they're like, oh, the labor unions are good. Like you pretending that you even had an ounce of support for the labor unions when all you've been doing is covering, Dave Rubin and, the Republicans for like 10 consecutive episodes before you even started covering the labor union. Jimmy Dore has always been on the forefront. I guarantee you he has had more guests of lower income and marginalized, representing lower income and marginalized communities on his show, including Nick from Socialist MMA, from Revolutionary Blackout Network. He has had more of those people on his show than the Majority Report has ever had in their entire existence.
Like this is less concerned to me because it's like this is actually like a time for everyone to refocus And we've said that too. We should have had more union organizers on this show, and towards something that's real, because something good actually did happen.
Yeah, the good recommendation. That's the one thing you're correct about. That's probably true. You probably should have more union organizers on this show. Jimmy Dore has had constant activists and union organizers on his show, and Revolutionary Blackout Network and channels like that have had, even more. And they all are part of this community, man. The Vanguard even has had some union members on their show, too. And they're like the equivalent of left TMZ, okay? Like, that's all they are. But they still had people on their show, including Chris Hedges and Ron Placone, that are very important to the overall real left's movement.
And I think like it's I don't care about like Krystal Ball show. I never watch it, but like I feel like it's not. This isn't the thing to hit them on. It's like the sort of like soft on like it's sort of like trying to launder COVID libertarianism into the mainstream, like that stuff. If they want to try to brand over who's the more militant union
that's right.
support
COVID libertarianism. Tell me, when labor union leaders were getting evicted from their homes, when labor union workers were getting laid off from their jobs because of the COVID sanctions, where there was a mass panic and spread of COVID-19 that killed our economy, the mandates didn't only worsen that. So it's not so much a sense of COVID libertarianism as it is to just get people back on the payroll. Okay? Get people more affordable housing. Get people healthcare. Get people universal healthcare. Get people better infrastructure. Get people better criminal justice reforms. But instead, you want to focus on a goddamn proxy conflict in Ukraine and Russia, just like you did with the COVID situation and the vaccine mandates, to further distract the American people from what we should actually be achieving. It makes me so frustrated, people like this. And then they go after, they all place the blame on Jimmy Dore, like, oh, he's a right-winger. Every one of his viewers are right-wingers. No, Jimmy Dore is pro-worker, pro-LGBTQI plus rights, pro-legalization of weed. I can't take this smearing of Jimmy Dore. I've already explained, he's anti-war. He's been at protests with, the Party of Socialism and Liberation on the war against Iran. He was protesting potential war against Iran. And he made a very loud and proud speech about this. It doesn't matter the party, Nomiki. You still analyze things from the frame of just simply right versus left, when there's a lot more complexity to this. The elites control the two-party system. They will fuck over American people time and time and time and time again. But your solution is to not attack the politicians, to not critique the politicians. Give AOC credit, man. I mean, she attended the Met Gala. Such bullshit. All right, I think that will be it. I can't listen to these two anymore. It literally makes my IQ drop like 20 points.